double intro. How's that? Can you hear me now? All right. Hello, everyone.
Marketing.
Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing. Yep.
Lauren Gray is on a little bit of a time delay, which we believe may be due to the beard that he's growing, that the internet is just trying to cope with the beard, and it can't handle that much sexy, so it has slowed down his connection.
I thought it was the thigh.
Oh, I see. So, welcome.
Wait, I'm gonna wear my glasses today. I think I look smarter.
We're joined by Lauren Gray, kind of live from Toronto, sort of on probably a 5-second delay, because Lauren may say unpredictable things, I guess, so we put that in. And Mr. Tim Peter from I Am Trusting, the center of the travel universe in
Long Valley, New Jersey.
Long Valley, New Jersey. That's right.
Yeah.
So there we are.
Be it ever so humble.
That's right. So Lauren is up in Toronto. So they don't have
Boston.
Oh, I messed that up. I got you reversed. You were in Toronto, what, 2 days ago, maybe?
Yep. Yeah, I was in Toronto yesterday and the day before and a few days before that. So yeah, now Boston, which terrible connection. I'm gonna chime out and come back in and see if I can get better.
Well, that's understandable. Boston, I don't think, has much of a tech community, so their internet is probably really, really slow there, just as a city, I would imagine, right? So.
Right.
Oh, look at that nice freeze. Oh, you froze on a sort of like a Santa-ish smile. Anyway, well, I have no idea if Lauren has us streaming anywhere since he handles all of that. Oh, and he's going to be in here twice, it looks like.
Nice.
Look at this. So always nice to start off with some interesting technical unpredictability.
Absolutely.
But we do have a top story of the day, and we found one that
I question the authenticity of this or the author's credibility. I think there's a credibility issue with this particular article that you picked.
Which one's the top story? I didn't read.
Oh, well, there's the top story of the day was, I believe, by some fellow, I think it was on a prison work release program or something like that. And so it was very interesting. The title of it was, let's see, what was the exact title? Digital Trends to Watch in 2019.
Oh, I didn't read that one.
No. The origin of that is questionable. At least the authority level of it, I think, is questionable.
We really should let people in on the joke, by the way.
Yeah, authored by Mr. Tim Peter of Tim Peter and Associates, and published on Hotel News Now.
Yeah.
So we're talking the big time. So this is an authoritative article. Should be taken not as opinion, but as predictive fact. So
I stand by that. What's the
I would hope so.
What is that thing? There's a logical fallacy of when you attack the person, not the content, right? In this case, you can attack the person. I have no problem with that. You would be wise to. But the content still may well be valid.
So the schizophrenia is getting worse, right? So
we don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Well, Tim, why don't you, since you seem to be the authoritative resource, why don't you give us a little run through of the trends, digital trends to watch?
Sure. So, I believe, and I think there's a lot of, I don't just believe, obviously the data is there, and I link to specific items within the post, within the article, that there are a handful of things we need to be very conscious of. And the first one, and I hesitate to refer to this as a trend at this point, but it's amazing how often hotels still undervalue mobile. So it's not a trend. That mobile is not a trend. Mobile is now a way of life for our customers and for our guests. Most hotels are seeing 40 or 50 or more, 40%, 50% or more of their traffic coming from mobile. And if you're not, that's typically a statement about how ineffective your site is when it comes to mobile, right? It's not if you build it, they will come. They're not coming because you never built it.
Built it.
Right? So I hesitate to call it a trend, other than to note it's something that it's long past time for hotels to really pay attention to. One of the stats I always try to get people to understand is we see very low conversion rates on mobile across the board for a whole host of reasons that we can obviously talk about here on the show. But typical conversion rates, and I'm using other people's data on this, you can dispute the numbers, but I stand by the ratio. Typical conversion rates on mobile are 2%. There was a link, by the way, to this. For whatever reason, Hotel News now removed this link, versus 0.7% on mobile, which means that for every 1,000 sessions coming to your website on mobile, you're losing about 13 reservations. And if you assume about $200 per reservation, that starts to add up to some real money pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, some hotels are going to get 1,000 sessions in a week. Some hotels are going to get 1,000 sessions in a month. Some hotels are going to get 1,000 sessions in 6 months, right? So I chose those numbers for a very specific reason. But no matter where your traffic is, you're going to see a hit to your revenue if you don't convert more effectively. And that's why it's still a trend we need to focus on. Obviously, one of the things that helps drive conversion, one of the things that helps drive people towards the top of the funnel is content. Content continues to be king. And again, we can talk about this more as we go on. But just to run through the 5 items that I mentioned. The next one is, of course, AI. And specifically where I think it impacts the travel industry is if you look at what Booking.com is doing with AI, if you look at what Expedia is doing with AI, if you look at what Google is doing with AI, if you look at what Facebook is doing with AI, in terms of determining what customers see, right? This isn't about you need to be using AI at your hotel. It's about you need to be thinking about the fact that AI determins what guests see about your hotel and when you actually get viewed and when you actually rank and things like that. So this isn't, hand-wavy off in the future stuff. This is things that are affecting you today, right? The next one is a little bit more to be aware rather than something that's absolutely going to drive huge numbers next year. But we need to start thinking about voice, and we need to start thinking about how we accommodate guests who are using voice during their navigation, during their search, etc. As I mentioned before, half of all traffic tends to be on mobile. Half of all searches are done on mobile, and about 20% of those are done on voice. So you're seeing anywhere between 10 to 20% of all searches are done on voice. And so you have to think about, am I actually showing up when people are looking for me there? So that's why I think that's a trend we need to pay attention to. And then the last one, of course, is all of that doesn't matter if you have a crappy guest experience, right? This has nothing to do with, technology. This has nothing to do with digital. It has everything to do with, are you creating a good experience for your guests so that they will tell their friends and family and fans and followers on social media about you, much like our good friend Ed St. Onge likes to talk about a lot, quite rightly. So those are the 5 trends I think we need to be aware of: mobile, content, AI, voice, guest experience. And if you are not prepared for each of those, you're really setting yourself up for a really tragic 2019. I mean, that's really why I make that as
and again, I would say content should somewhat be table stakes at this point.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Somewhat be table stakes
Right.
At this point. You can look at the AI you need to consider and think some of that is beyond your control. Because, yeah, as you said, the typical hotel probably isn't going to have a really massive AI initiative.
No, definitely not.
Really pushing forward. And if anybody tries to tell you to do that when you're a small or mid-sized hotel,
right,
don't do it, because you need really good data. You need a lot of data, and then you need some good tools to work with, and some people who can use those tools appropriately, which are probably
I would start to debate that last one a little bit, Robert, and I'll explain why I'm going to debate that last one a little bit.
Okay.
First of all, I agree with everything you said up to that last point, and I only disagree slightly on the last point, right?
Okay.
So to go point by point for just a second, obviously, if you're a small hotel, I agree completely. This is not a game you want to be playing in. If you're a larger hotel company, you definitely need to be thinking about at least how do I get all my data in a place where I can start to think about using machine learning and AI to start to interpret that data, right? So depending on where you are in the scale, you may or may not actually do your own AI initiative. I completely agree. If you're an individual hotel or a smaller hotel, yeah, you're not going to do this. Not only are you not going to do this anytime soon, you may not do this for years, right? Which, by the way, for years is where I may slightly disagree as we get to the end of this. Yes, you need a lot of data. That's one of the reasons why it's not going to work for small hotels. Completely agree. Yes, you need to have the right tools to ask the questions. And Stuart Butler's coming on, and Stuart can back me up on this last point, which is...
No, he's not.
No, Stuart, just disagree vehemently.
Vehemently disagree with whatever
No.
to say.
We're talking about AI, and will hotels, should hotels invest and have and the basic point is individual hotels won't be doing much with AI hands-on anytime soon. Now, Robert's point was, you need the resources to really interpret this stuff, and the only reason I disagree with that is we're starting to see vendors incorporate AI into their offerings in some way. So you can buy the resources as you need them based on does this tool help you answer some core questions, right? So you won't be hiring the resources yourself. I agree completely. But start to look for the tools that enable you to take advantage of AI, which some vendors are starting to offer, right?
With that vendor having the resources
Correct.
to interpret it properly. Because one of the major challenges with AI is if you can get the right answers to the wrong questions.
Oh, for sure. Oh, absolutely.
I'm trying to help you a lot.
Actually, my favorite thing about this, obviously, you all know the story about when Microsoft made the AI bot on Twitter, and within a day or two, it was racist, sexist, homophobic, etc.
It was just trying to fit in, Tim. It was really trying to get along.
Exactly. But somebody pointed out. I was actually at a Watson demonstration. A year and a half ago or something, and somebody wisely pointed out that when they were trying to teach it to diagnose cancer, they learned that the quality of the doctors mattered a lot, because if you were training the thing with subpar doctors, you weren't creating artificial intelligence, you were creating artificial stupidity.
Right. That's right.
So your point is rock solid, about the fact that, you need to have people who know how to ask the right questions and know how to interpret it. At the same time, I think that's going to become, I think in 2019, we're going to start to see not just a couple, but quite a few tools in the marketplace that people can take advantage of that allow them to put AI to work to answer key business problems. I think we're starting to see it already, and we're going to see a lot more of that as we get into 2019.
Yeah, I'm going to do a shameless plug. I don't know if you guys saw our press release this past week, but we
did
partnered with a company called Blue Shift, who are very big in the AI space in online retail. And we've created a new eCRM product that is heavily based on AI and machine learning. And, it's not to make life more complicated. It's to try to make sense of all this data we've had for a long time and not being able to action upon. So, we know a lot about our guests, but it's not all in a single place. We have data in our PMS about, who they are and where they live and how frequently they've stayed. We have data in our email platforms, which is, what emails did they open? What content were they interested in? We got data on our website, which is when did they visit our site? What pages did they look at? What rates were they looking at? What are their interests? What events? But we've never really been able to take all of that together in one place, which is one of the things we've done. And now, taking the data and trying to extrapolate from it what it means. So what we're doing a lot with machine learning now is observing lots and lots of behavior and starting to see patterns. And when we recognize frequent patterns that are indications of something's likely going to happen. It's a weighting, right? It's not a certainty, but it's, hey, 70% of people that exhibit these behaviors tend to go on to do X, Y, Z.
Right.
That's the AI piece that we're baking into our ECRM. So it automatically now can say, here are segments of people that have this propensity to book, or this likelihood to spend this amount of money. And here's how a campaign that would probably be smart to target to those people. So that's how we're using AI in just one of our products that we're rolling out now. There's a waiting list of clients getting on it. We've got it out in beta, but it's going to launch to the masses in December. So I agree with you in terms of hotels themselves don't necessarily need to go hire a data scientist, AI guru, but a lot of their partners, if they're not already talking to you about AI and how it can benefit your marketing, then they certainly will be in 2019.
Right.
And Ed and I are actually next week, we're not going to be at Focusrite because we've got another conference called the OPMA, which is the On-Site Property Managers Association. And Ed and I are on a panel where we're talking about technology. And so we're talking about current technology, i.e. mobile, and how impactful it is today. We're talking about near term, which we're focusing on voice. And then we're talking about a little further out, and we're talking a lot about AI. So that's going to be a big conversation at that conference.
By the way,
and a lot of vendors are contributing to that. We've asked vendors, hey, how are you using AI in the next 12 months? And so we've got examples of that, which is really cool.
And Stuart, we're talking about the Hotel News Now column. Since we're talking shameless plugs, I happen to write this one.
You noticed that.
You checked 3 of the boxes that are in there, right? Which is mobile, which is voice, which is AI, right?
Yeah.
I learned a great term the other day. It's a shame because I feel like I buried the lead on the AI one a little bit. I said additionally expect to see commercial offerings from technology vendors that incorporate AI into their product, right? But I learned a great term like 2 weeks ago that I almost considered writing this column about this solely. Ed St. Ange, hey man.
He heard me say his name. He's got like a monitor on the internet. He's like Batman. He has this like big wall, and whenever someone mentions his name,
Beetlejuice.
J.K. Rowling wrote about that with Lord Voldemort also. So.
But I learned
who shall not be named was actually Ed, not Voldemort.
No question.
I learned this great term the other day about what a centaur is. Do you know what a centaur is in the modern usage?
Modern usage? No,
Modern
old
usage.
usage.
So in the original usage, right, it's half man, half horse, right? And what a lot of people are predicting, what I'm starting to see people predict as we go forward is this already exists in things like chess and in Go, game scenarios. The people who win the most are centaurs, where it's not just machines, but it's machines and people. And so that's a likely trend we're going to see a lot of as we go forward is, you as a hotel manager, you as a revenue manager, you as a marketer may not be replaced by an AI, but some parts of what you do will be, and it will make you more productive because you'll do the things you're good at, and the AI will do the things it is good at, and that you become a centaur. It's half person, half
it's
AI.
augmentation,
Or you're
right?
a professional gambler, perhaps, or
I prefer cyborg. I'm going for
I was
cyborg.
going to say Star Trek computer. That when you think about the modem of Star Trek computers, it's like the computer is brilliant. Why doesn't it do everything? It's because it can't. The humans have to do it, but the humans can't do everything. So why, it's a computer. Tell me what this is. Tell me computer. I think that you're right. There's going to be this combination of conversation.
Yeah, it's already happening, right? Because you look at Google and all the stuff they've done to automate ads in the last year or so, where they'll make recommendations and actually automatically change your bid or automatically change the keywords that you're running on without you doing anything. And you can turn that off. But what we found is you turn it on, but monitor it really closely because sometimes it's dumb what it does, or it just doesn't have knowledge that we have, like inherent knowledge. So,
or
sometimes
exactly right. It's set to make sure Google has a good quarter update.
What?
No, Ed. How dare you? How dare you cause such aspersions? But the point is, it's augmentation, right? It's taking the big data and making it small with the machine learning and doing predictive stuff that we just don't have enough time and energy to devote to it as humans. Let the computers do that, but then let's use intuition, creativity, which computers are crap at right now, let's use the human part of that and marry.
I
it
mean, to
together.
be fair, most humans are too.
Well,
So-
but I mean, to be fair, you know, I mean, it also points to the fact that some of the data is not in the system, right? There are things you're
Correct,
going to
yeah.
know because you're on property walking around or whatever that today is recorded nowhere. So, you
Right.
know, it's going to make a good recommendation given the data it has, and then you bring some other context that says, oh, but what about this thing that you didn't know to make a recommendation about? So, yeah. And that's going to, I think that's going to be an enormous shift. You know, I since we're doing shameless self-promotion at the moment, I did a podcast episode about this a while ago, which was, you know, AI is not going to take your job. Smart people who use AI will,
Mhm.
right?
True.
Pretty good statement. That's a pretty good statement.
So anyway,
So, Mr. Robert, what other article did you find of particular interest that you threw into a well-curated list?
I didn't have another one. That was the
Lauren, that sounds like you did not read Robert's list this morning.
I did. No, I have a couple.
He's trying to be a good
I'd like to
host.
bring up the Marriott.
He's still reading the one about sex is better in the hotel room. He hasn't finished that.
That's right. I haven't got past the point of, you know, sex is
I read that one and realized why my wife travels so much.
No, I
There
did
were
find
so many other jokes I was thinking of making. Come on, that was the cleanest and best one I could go for.
Right?
No, I thought about the Marriott's fourth quarter. Yeah, but talk a little bit about Marriott's fourth quarter.
Oh, the Marriott's fourth quarter or
Yeah.
third quarter? Well, it's their fourth quarter forecast, or we can talk about their third quarter as well.
Fourth quarter forecast. I'm being shushed because I'm just outside the room, so I got to be very quiet about when I talk.
Oh,
Do they know who you are?
That's why they're shushing me.
How
That's why
dare they?
Wow.
exactly. No, Marriott had a little bit of trouble in the third quarter. Their basically their profitability, well, actually their RevPAR went up about 1.9% worldwide, which is not that great. You know, 5.4% outside North America, 0.6% in North America. And I find that kind of interesting because this has Starwood coming in. And Starwood doesn't have a lot of low-end product, right?
Right.
So that's not exactly what the street was anticipating. And Marriott was appropriately, you know, punished for.
So do we think this is something in the current portfolio? Because I mean, let's not forget, Marriott is not like made up of mostly the full service Marriotts and luxury. They're actually mostly made up room count wise on the lower cost spectrum.
Right.
So I mean, do we think something's going on that side of the economy, or do we think even worse that there's a very large impact in one of the smaller sectors that was big enough to impact them this way?
I mean, in some cases, they're saying there's, you know, hurricane and things like that from last year, with Houston in particular, that skews some of these things. But the interesting thing is, I think.
Wait, hold on. So they're saying that they forgot to account for the lift that they got
Well,
due to natural disasters that occurred last year.
Kind of. So, yeah. Well,
So then,
Okay,
that
show of
begs the
hands. How many
question-
people believe that?
growth being depressed, that was part of it, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know if they were too gung ho on their forecasts, looking ahead. But right now, they're looking at a fourth quarter forecast of being about 2% worldwide, only 1% in North America. And again, you know, when you start looking at that, you're like, that is trailing the industry. So that's not a great situation. So in some
I need
cases,
the sell button, and I'm going to break something with a bat.
in some cases, you know, they're saying, oh, you know, it's nothing to worry about. They're still integrating Starwood, and there's a little bit of bumpiness with that, things like that. But overall, you've got to be concerned where you have, you know, the largest hotel company in the world. I mean, you know, mediocre real growth year over year. Doing okay outside North America, but you know,
Was there data on occupancy or ADR, or was it just reporting
RevPAR.
Yeah,
is-
but
Reported
that
RevPAR,
could be a couple of things, right?
Right.
Oh, you're saying what's
Right.
the underlying?
Right.
I
So
don't
anecdotally, when I
think
travel, and I travel a lot I got 2 kids in travel soccer, so we travel, 2-3 hours in a bunch of directions, and typically if they're playing tournaments or we'll stay overnight. And we almost always stay at Spring Hill Suites just because it's, great, a good breakfast my kids like. It's convenient, it's clean, it's a good price point. So, and we get the point. So I anecdotally over the last 2 or 3 years have noticed that we go to the same Spring Hill Suites in the same destinations, and the rate is going down or staying flat. There's no increase in ADR on those properties.
Right.
So I don't know whether that's a demand thing or what, but we tend to go to the same place, the same time of year during the same kind of demand because there's a soccer tournament going on, and rates aren't going up, which I would have expected them to over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you guys are seeing across the board. I will tell you, with the properties I'm working with, there's definitely a little softness out there. I mean, I don't think it should come to any surprise that, in many markets, obviously, people have been saying for some time we're going to start to see a bit of a downturn. There's probably a recession of some kind coming. But historically, if you ignore 2008, recessions in the industry weren't recessions everywhere. They were, these markets get soft while these markets are fine, right? And then these markets do badly while these markets are fine. And I think we are starting to see
that's
softness.
what happens when there's a healthy economic base that is,
Right.
Just going through cycles.
Right. And I think we are in a healthy economic base that's going through a cycle. And we're starting to see softness in some markets. And I suspect Marriott's feeling some of the pressure there. I think if you talk to a lot of hotels, you're seeing the same thing, right? Robert, you've talked about what's the growth year on year? You do the trailing,
actually,
13 month or whatever it is.
Let me enter in this week's numbers. Give me about 30 seconds and I will tell you.
Yeah. But I mean, this is not surprising from the standpoint of, I think this almost is a rut-row, as we have to be aware of. We're probably entering the beginnings, if we're not already in, usually that when they say we're in a recession, the recession's been going on for 6 months, right? And we're 3 months from it being over. And I suspect that that's kind of where we are right now. We're starting to see the beginnings of a recession, which means we've probably been in it for a couple of months already. And this is just a sign of that.
Well, and I mean, if you tie together multiple stories that Robert had here, I mean, that's kind of the theme,
Right?
The limited upside in hotel acquisitions. I mean, all of that,
Right,
kind of lines up. And then even like Amadeus doubling down on spending, like it all makes sense. It all can kind of line up to people reading the tea leaves and deciding what their strategy is inside the change.
I can attest to, I'm traveling right now. One of the reasons why I'm being so quiet is obviously I'm in Boston with the Rocket program. We have Smith Travel, STR traveling with us. And of course, they do this massive data dump in each of the cities that we're located in. So I get a chance to kind of do a slice and dice as to what they interpret as the moving factors statistically for each of the destinations we're in. And it's always unique to listen to them because there's always these mitigating factors, cycles of business and so forth, and how they're then compared to the national averages and the time streams that get stretched out. And what I do notice sometimes is that there's this kind of dampening of effects when you stretch out the timelines, that this isn't what it seems to be. It's still progressing upwards, like the stock market. When you look a long enough string, you see this natural progression. But when you really start condensing it down into time slices, you see these dramatic spikes and flows depending upon fluctuations to this. And to your point, Tim, there's some markets that are definitively hit differently. And I think Marriott, because of its distribution and its inventory over so many markets, this is like the canary in the coal mine. You're seeing a little bit of something because it's connected to so many other data points that you are seeing some fluctuations as to how it sees its broad spectrum of inventory because of all the markets that it's sitting in, compared to an isolated market that may not have the same ripple effect as the nationalization or the globalization that Marriott does.
I mean, the good news is it's been fat and happy times for so long that there's fat that you can actually proactively become more efficient at to keep your profitability in a healthy place. Right. There's so much inefficiency during these times, and honestly, the whole like hotel industry spectrum does it when we're in fat times. They completely look over pennies, they look over dollars, they ignore it all just for the biggest, easiest stuff to go after. So the smart ones should at least be prepared to start looking at every penny and dollar to get through whatever this dip is, with limited negative impact.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's one thing to mention too, that before I have to step out and apologize, I'm being short for my time today.
You're talking really loud, Lauren.
Really loud.
I know, right? When asked in the rooms as to who has been a revenue manager during this entire upcycle, 102 weeks plus and counting and so forth, very few a lot of hands go up. But anybody that has been a revenue manager outside of that spectrum when they were in the downtimes or the growth periods,
Right.
not a lot. And so you're thinking, how well prepared are some of the
What happened to all
aspects of
those
it?
people?
Let me give you an example. The derivatives markets for real estate bundled mortgages and all the people who were in those markets going up until like 2007, 2008-ish. All the models were built with, hey, things are going up and they're great. And when they went down, they were not ready for it. The models weren't ready for it, and it was ugly. So
Right.
Where did all the revenue managers go? I mean, it's only been 10 years, and revenue management, like,
They're all
was
consultants now.
pretty serious back then. I mean, it's not like we're talking about what happened with like 9/11, the dot-com bubble. Like, yeah, prior to that, it was a very long time since there had been serious economic downturn that affected the industry. I mean, and used to talk about it a lot then, because salespeople in the hotel space leading up to those events didn't actually know how to sell. They knew how to take orders, answer RFPs, but actually didn't know how to go look for business. And it was painful for a lot of them to go through that lesson that, hey, just keeping up with the growth of your market is not acceptable when the market's growth is not enough. But I'm surprised to hear that the majority of that audience was revenue managers who weren't around for the last go round. That's
I'm going to step out, gentlemen. I'm going to take off. I'm going to go back to it. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think, if we're talking about a downturn, one of the things we want to be conscious is,
See, Lauren?
don't make the mistake, of competing on price in a downturn, right? Compete on value, lowering rate is
unless you own your hotel cash.
yes.
Yeah, but even then,
Harris Rosen will disagree with you.
I know. Well, I'll disagree
because he owns his hotel's cash and he kills it
Right.
at this time.
Yeah.
This is when he picks up a ton of loyal customers who would previously not consider him.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say there couldn't be exceptions to this. What I am going to say is, we want to think about the fact of a story we've heard for the last 2 years is how much growth there's been in the marketplace in terms of demand and how little growth there's been in the marketplace in terms of ADR. And a lot of that is because people were starting from such a soft base after the 2008 downturn. It takes a long time to claw that back.
Oh, absolutely.
So, focus more on what you can do for value adds, focus more in terms of what you can do in packaging, focus more in terms of what you can do of giving somebody something extra as opposed to just cutting rate. Because
if you are in a position where
really hard,
where you need to cut rate, make sure you're doing it through a source of business where it's not super easy for others to discover. So do it in your group practice, or do it somewhere where you can weather doing that without it having permanent negative effect on all channels of business.
Actually, a great example. A client of mine was having some softness a year ago and opted, because they had the occupancy, to sign some flight business, right? To sign the crew business. Obviously not a public rate. Obviously depressed their overall RevPAR, but obviously occupancy went up a lot, and it's been a nice source of business for them in terms of revenue, but nothing public, which has worked out really nicely.
That's the bottom of the glass.
Yeah, and if
exactly right.
If you got to count the number of nights that you're displacing the transient business, you do some simple calculations and go, hey, it's and even if it's close, you go, you know what? That's the bird in the hand sort of thing. So what are you
exactly right.
Just a couple things on the numbers. The 12-month moving average for occupancy has declined now for the 9th consecutive week. It peaked on the first week of September, and the 12-month moving average on the occupancy is sloping downward, a little bit. I mean, it's basically plateaued, but it is coming off that peak. The interesting thing is, if you look at the 12-month moving average for ADR, it is now what I'd look at those are every time it passes $1 increase, like how many weeks does it take? So it has now been 20. Oh, no. It took 20 weeks for it to go from $127 to $128. Let's see how long it took from 126 to 127 was 13 weeks. Right?
Yep.
So,
I mean, again,
yeah.
though, I'm going to say here, like, this should have been expected. This should have been, somewhat built into your plan. And you should have by now had an idea of things you were going to do to be ahead of the others that are surprised by this. I mean, a perfect example is I recently introduced Lauren to a hotelier friend of mine who owns a hotel in South Beach. And this was after, he was kind of telling me he was worried because his ADR keeps going down, even though his ADR is below what it should be for what his hotel is. And knowing what I know about his business, I said, well, listen, you're probably not being aggressive enough against your comp set and all of that. So I introduced him to Lauren. He hires Lauren. Lauren does his initial review. None of his comp set is doing anything to actually actively try to drive business. They're just all present to win, including him. And so Lauren's response to him is, all right, well, based on my findings, I actually think we can shoot above your goal ADR because the whole market's asleep around you and you have a good product. He actually just finished a renovation. He positioned himself well.
Right.
That's South Beach. Like,
Right.
So, and this isn't, it's not like Lauren was looking at a narrow thread. Like, that means a good collection of hotels in South Beach aren't doing the basics to try and drive demand. They're literally playing the be present to win. So I have to imagine if that's happening in South Beach, that's happening in many markets. So if you're here and you have a single property that you're trying to be proactive on, I'd start with looking at, are any of your competitors actively trying to take market share? If they are not, start that program today. Start actively trying to take market share because it will take your competitors by surprise. And it will probably be pretty cheap until your competitors wake up. So, just a interesting tidbit that, I think applies to this on what do you do when you start to see softness.
And I think that's a bigger problem than you realize. We see it. We do a lot of evaluations for folks, and we see it a lot where they're almost on autopilot with their marketing strategy because there's a lot of vendors that have cropped up over the last 4 or 5 years in a very comfortable market where they said, hey, set it and forget it. You look at the Sojourns of the world or the Trip Teasers of the world, right? They're just a plug and play kind of a product that they say, just switch this.
Ironically, this hotel owner was calling me to get my take on if I thought Trip Tease would be an answer for him. And I said to him, like, I can see his data. I said, your problem is not site conversion. Your problem is you have like no traffic coming in and your booking engine is horrible. So I said, before you spend money there, fix the bigger problems first.
Lauren showed me the property and I was like, within 5 minutes, I was like, here's 10 things you can do right now that are going to improve the situation.
It's amazing, right? Like,
it was lazy marketing, right? It was,
and he actually had an active person on his payroll that was supposed to be out there executing strategies. But it is.
Executing strategies become selecting the vendors that you plug into your your machine and then sitting back and looking at data.
Yeah, and if nobody's evaluating the overall performance and what it's doing, then
in driving the strategy, and I don't mean to call out these vendors because I think both products can be used effectively, but you have to. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier.
Exactly
the human has to be driving the strategy in this day and age currently, and if you just put it on autopilot, you're going to get a mediocre kind of return.
Exactly right.
Well, and if you do the worst thing, which is you buy it, you get it to a point that you're happy enough with it, and then you never do a thing again.
Right.
I can tell you, I'm on the backside of a year of being incredibly annoying to a very large group of hotels that I work with, to the point where now I'm calling to gloat because they finally have done some things I've chased them for, and they had like quadruple digit increases in ROI from just doing things that they never have to do again. Right. It was just getting them to do it the first time. So now I just call them and say, hey, it's Ed again. can you guess what I'm calling for? I'm calling to annoy you, but as you've learned, I'm only doing that to make you money.
Right.
And they're just like, all right, we get it. We
Okay,
get it.
I gotta-
let's talk to our account manager. They're taking care of it.
Yeah, please stop, Ed. We want to go back to the account manager. We don't want to talk to you anymore.
So I got a great story for you guys in relationship to this. I'm doing some work with a property where they work with an agency we all know and have heard of.
No, I heard about this yesterday, Tim.
Did you? Did you really? Oh no.
From the owner of the agency.
Did you really?
He's super, like, he was telling me, he's like, man, I really screwed over Tim and I feel really horrible
No,
about
he didn't
it.
screw over anybody. He didn't screw over anybody. I mean, here's the reality, right? Is you've got to pay attention to this stuff. And I'm not going to call out the agency specifically because it doesn't matter.
Come
You know,
on.
No. But one of the recommendations was for some of the property, for one of the properties, use AdWords Express, right? Which, first of all, is a very odd recommendation to start with.
Yeah.
What's worse than that is that AdWords Express, which, you really don't manage, you just kind of set it and forget it, the kind of thing we're telling people don't do, was outperforming the managed accounts.
Oh.
Now, the agency didn't screw me over. They screwed themselves over because not only did they do that, they gave us a report that showed that. Like if I was doing that, my advice to the owner of the agency, and I haven't told them this yet, but I'm like, if you can't beat what Google does automatically, the best thing you can do for your clients is fire all your staff and just set everybody up on AdWords Express.
Exactly.
Right? Lower their
The
costs.
profit
Yep.
would be insane.
Profit would be insane, right? And you know that the performance is going to be at least at a baseline, right?
Yeah, it's
But-
ironic you bring it up because I was literally on a call with him yesterday afternoon and he volunteered it. He's like, man, he's like,
Yeah.
I really messed up and I feel horrible.
No.
Like,
Look,
especially,
these things happen, and I'm not like pissed. I'm not like angry or anything along those lines. It's a testament to why some of this is hard to do. And
Right.
if your agency isn't being held accountable, you're not going to notice this stuff, right?
Yep.
and that's the most important thing. Is
I mean, realistically,
make sure you have other sources of understanding what's happening. So like, like for example, some of my clients know that we have analytical view into everything. And I actually have been getting phone calls from a couple of them saying, hey, I'm getting this report from this agency. It doesn't at all match up with my Google Analytics. Can you look at your analytics and tell me what you're seeing? Because, and Stuart, I talked to you about this client because all we can figure out is it was just a massive, gigantic spend on display advertising that burned a gigantic amount of money with absolutely zero traffic.
Right.
Because display advertising doesn't work.
Well, I mean, you brought up
for those display ads for their beauty.
Well, I mean, I had the scenario. I had a different scenario, different client, different agency, different product, but very much the same thing where they were doing some retargeting and the like. They credited the retargeting with a dramatic increase in reservations and everything. And at the same time, we looked at year on year, and the reservations volume was flat. So they were crediting the reservations. They were crediting the retargeting for the reservations, but it wasn't adding anything to the table. And I see this again and again and again where people will say, well, this work did X. Well, if it did X,
and a
we
lot
should
of it's because their baseline understanding is bad.
Right.
Right.
I mean, we see it all the time. Like we ping hotels because we can see where they don't even have basic cross domain set up from their website to their booking engine. And it's like, so how do you know what's going on? What are you talking about? We get a report from the booking engine.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, still ones, campaign tagging, right? Social tag, none of that stuff. It just doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And you're figuring out your funnel how?
Well, and to bring this full circle, I mean, the upside for anybody who's watching this, who is a hotel owner, who is a hotel manager, who is a hotel marketer, is your competition is struggling with the same challenges you are. So, there's the old joke about the two guys who are walking through the woods and all of a sudden a bear comes charging towards them. And the one guy sits down, pulls off his boots and starts to put on his running shoes. And the second guy says, what are you doing? You're never going to outrun that bear. And the first guy says, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you. Mm-hmm. And so the point here is, be the first guy in that story. You're not necessarily going to outrun the bear. If we're going into a downturn, that's a bear. That's not going to be an easy thing. But you can outrun the other guy with just some very simple, blocking and tackling of get your numbers right, get your tagging right, measure everything you're doing, invest in the things that are, double down on the things that are working, and stop spending money on the dumb stuff.
Right. Yeah,
right?
that's
and
the
three of the
right?
four people currently on your screen could help you with those things. I won't tell you which ones.
Actually, I would say four of the four. Just we do it in different ways.
That's true. That's true.
But I think a word of caution, right? Because I think it's easy in a downturn like this that you look at your budget and you're like, where can I slash? Go at it with a hatchet. And it's, and that's probably the biggest mistake at this point,
because let's be honest, what's
do.
always the first thing to get cut?
It's
the
always
most foolish
right?
thing to cut in a downturn, which is marketing. Right. That's why the OTAs have all come to power in serious economic downturn times. That's when every major OTA that's existed got to power because they were doing the opposite. They were going, it's cheaper, so we're getting more for our money. Pump it, pump it, pump it.
Exactly.
True.
So now's the time to sharpen your sword, right? To really, like you said, Tim, is to scrutinize every aspect of your marketing and figure out what is working. And if you can't tell that, then you're doing something wrong, because you should be able to measure everything successfully and be able to determine what's working, what's not, and cut the fat. But don't just cut arbitrarily.
But let's look at let's look at Expedia and Booking's performance versus Marriott. Okay. Right. So Marriott in the third quarter's operating income was $483 million, which that's fine, but up 0% over the third quarter last year. Expedia had $651 million, so a little bit higher, but their operating income was up 31%. Now you go, oh, well, okay, did they acquire something, whatever? No, their room night growth was only 13%. Their gross bookings were up 11%. Their revenue was up 12%. Their operating income was up 31%, and adjusted EBITDA was up 23%. Right. So it's at the peak of the market. They are being very, very efficient, right?
Right.
And it was skewed a little bit because they did start selling the HomeAway inventory on the regular side, right? So I think that kind of skews things, but still, that should not happen in this economy right now.
I also do think, by the way,
go look at Booking, though. Booking, their room night growth was 13% as well. Right? Gross bookings up 12, revenue up 11. Okay, they were doing a couple different things, but their operating income is $1.8 billion. It's almost triple Expedia's, and it's almost it's certainly over fourfold Marriott. So
and it goes back to set it and forget it, right? These hotels that have gotten lazy and comfortable, they're making enough profit to feed their families, so I don't care giving away 15% because I don't have to deal with it. And these channels take care of it for me. That's
and I have a long-standing theory that I don't want to say I wanted another downturn by any stretch, but I've been waiting for a downturn to see if the theory holds water. 2008 was unusual. But if you look at the split between direct revenue and indirect revenue, what has tended to be true since OTAs existed and since people started looking at this stuff going back to 2001, 2002, is that the OTAs do worse in a strong economy and the OTAs do better in a weak economy, right?
Yep.
And I think that the fact that Expedia and Booking are doing well could be another canary in the coal mine, indicating we're actually seeing some softness, because what tends to happen is in a weaker economy, people shop around more and become more rate conscious and the like, and that invariably benefits.
But also at the same time, hotels also loosen up on their inventory.
Yeah, for sure.
So both things happen, they converge. No, it's actually really interesting. So I mean, I owned Easy Yield during the financial crisis.
Right.
And those were the fastest growth years Easy Yield ever experienced, to the point where we were able to take advantage of the down employment market to hire really good people really quickly.
Right.
And what I've found, I'm seeing it with Flip2, is there is just a complacency that stops hotels from looking at more efficient ways to do things and all of that. And as soon as the shock hits, or you're hit with the challenge by your manager to say, hey, you got to figure out how to be more efficient or be better or win this war, all of a sudden the businesses that truly feed those types of things all go into accelerated growth mode. I mean, I remember having to have a speech to my staff because it was so strange where all of them were worried we were going to lay them off because all of their spouses have been laid off. And we're sitting here going, stop worrying about this. You're not going anywhere. We're growing because, we're not affected by the markers that are affecting these things.
Well, if I can appeal to people's baser instincts on this, one of the reasons you also want to harp on data is because it can save your job, right? I will tell a true story. In 2009, when the downturn hit, I was working for leading hotels. Ted Teng came to me and he said, you need to cut your budget, right? You need to slash spending in these areas and the like. And I pointed to every single line on the budget. And I said, Ted, here's the thing. This dollar pays for this person who runs this program that generates X dollars, X times dollars in revenue. These dollars pay for performance marketing, and every dollar we spend over here nets our hotels X times Y dollars over here. I said, we absolutely can cut that stuff, but the minute we do, the revenue goes down by even more. So I said, if we're really going to cut that stuff, we may as well just fold our tents and go home, because literally every single dollar we put into play actually generates revenue for our hotels. So if cutting that is actually bad for our customers, which were the hotels, because they're actually going to get less revenue. And he looked at me, he looked at the thing, and he goes, can you back every single one of these numbers? And I said, absolutely, I can. And so we sat down and went through it line by line. He goes, you're absolutely right. We're not cutting a dollar here. We'll figure out where to find the money for that. We'll go find it somewhere else. Right? Were there little things like travel we could cut? Of course. But I mean, in terms of the big spend areas, every single one of them was revenue generating. And we stuck with it and it worked.
Yeah. Well, and here's one other thing.
And nobody got fired, by the way.
That's good. That's a nice story. So,
Happy ending.
Happy ending.
Exactly. I did tell him, by the way, the best person, if you're going to fire anybody, you really should fire me because I'm the most expensive person in the room and they do all the work. And then I realized that's a really dumb thing to say.
Exactly. At which point he threw his team under the bus.
You need me. These people can barely put their clothes on the right way in the morning without my help.
I do want to point out Tim Peter and Associates didn't start for 3 years after that. So I managed to weather that storm too.
That's funny.
Okay, well here's something though. We said Booking was making some changes. What they're doing is they are going, again, there may be a downturn, right? Priceline, there will be at some point. Nobody knows when, but it will, markets just don't continue upward. Or if they do, this is going to be something very, very new for economics. Right. But, and Priceline, remember, almost died during the, just prior to 9/11. I mean, that June, July, August, they were borderline bankrupt and horrifically
life
kind of
support.
By 9/11, right, with that dramatic downturn. Well, they were always a big merchant model player, and obviously Booking.com was the agency model player. Well, in the third quarter of this year, again, we're at peak, kind of hitting a peak here. Booking Holdings revealed its merchant hotel revenue jumped 53.4% to nearly $1 billion, while its agency revenue grew less than 1% to $3.5 billion. So merchant hotel revenue for Booking Holdings overall is now about 22%, where it was it was down in the 10. It was pretty low, right? So they are, and the numbers of room nights from a room night growth, 65.7% increase in merchant room nights. Agency nights grew 2.3%. So they are positioning themselves right now to get these merchant deals in place. And guess what happens when when things turn down, that's when things start shifting to merchant, and then they can really start making some.
And my gosh, if you think you dislike OTAs right now,
Okay.
Well, but on the way down, people will be loving them because they'll be going, do you need rooms? You can't find them anywhere else. You've exhausted all your direct channels, right? You cannot cost effectively, again, because of the pressures of cutting marketing budgets and everything. You don't have the budget. You don't have the reach. You don't have any of this stuff. Or you can come to us risk-free. And
Well,
you just
risk-free.
and you pay. Well, that's what they'll say. There's no risk. You
That's
pay
the
on
sales pitch.
That is a lovely cow you have there. Would you like some beans?
And a lot of hotel owners, if they are leveraged at all, would say those beans look great.
But this
Oh,
this goes back to one of the reasons why, when we're talking about, we started with the trends. One of the reasons I think content is a trend and should be a trend and something we need to keep doubling down on is, I've said this on the show many times. People are going to get sick of hearing this from me. But what are the stats? 95% of people who start on an OTA book on an OTA. Don't quote me on the exact number. It's whatever it is, it's a lot. Almost everybody who starts on an OTA books on an OTA. Something like 30% or 35% of people who book on a hotel website book on the hotel website. Otherwise, they book someplace else, right? But the thing that's hidden in those numbers is 100% of the people who don't come to your website don't book on your website.
Yeah,
Right?
you lose every fight you don't show up for.
You lose every fight you don't show up for. I would much rather take my odds with getting 35% of the people who come to me booking with me than knowing that 95% of the people who go to the OTA to start are going to end up there. And if you don't have content, they're never going to start with you.
Yeah,
Ever.
I agree.
Right? You got to get them more top of the funnel. And it's a place that the OTAs, I don't want to say they've conceded the fight. I'm saying they're driving.
They're ineffective at it.
They're ineffective at it, right? People are more interested at the point of booking of going someplace like that because they know they get variety, they know they get price, yada yada, all those kinds of things. You can get people when they're earlier in the funnel, and you get a third of them are going to say, "Yeah, I'm going to do that."
But here's
Right?
the thing: what you have to do at that phase is you actually have to sell them on coming to your area at
Correct.
the general time that they would be able to come to your area,
Correct.
and why it's great to be there at the time that they could potentially be in your area. Then you sell them on your hotel.
That's
You
exactly
mean-
right.
you mean marketing your family vacations to school-age kids
Right.
during the school year would be a bad idea? Really?
Unless you're timeshare. You know that the timeshare industry completely figured out that it's the kids who drive the decision on the timeshare purchase.
Oh, yeah.
So you completely cater to the kids,
Yeah.
and that's how you get their parents.
Right. Yep.
Hey boys, I gotta run. Unfortunately, I gotta
You
cut
do?
off here. Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna cut you short.
Sure.
Have a great weekend.
Unfortunately. Thanks. I'll see you next week, gentlemen. I'll see
Yeah,
you
man.
soon.
Cool.
I'm gonna miss next week's show, but I'll be on the following one.
I will also miss next week's show
I
because we're going to an event, Stuart and
Yeah.
I together.
Yes.
very nice.
We're speaking on a panel about buckling up for the future.
Now wait,
Sorry.
on Friday? On
On
Friday?
Thursday, we are
Thursday,
doing
so-
that. And on
Yeah.
Friday, I'm flying back to Orlando to then go to my daughter's sloth-themed birthday party.
Wait, whoa. Are you
Nice.
talking about the animal or the character from the Goonies?
Wait, yeah, so are you talking
Both. No,
about the animal or the seven
the
deadly
the two-toed kind.
Okay.
Yes.
If
I
it was a
thought-
Goonies
yeah, so
party,
I'm-
I was going to be there.
seven deadly sins birthday parties
Yes,
for your
exactly.
daughter?
Which actually, that's probably a good 21st birthday. Yeah.
Yeah, for real.
I have a milestone birthday in about a month, and you suddenly have given me a great idea for the theme of mine.
Sloth.
I was thinking, yes, exactly.
Yes.
always-
Well,
I'm
I
thinking-
look forward to Tim. I'm going to get an invite to your 70th birthday, right?
I guess
oh my gosh, there's so many jokes I want to make right now. How about, I don't know that I'm going to live that long.
so,
Have you gotten news about your short-term viability on living?
70 is like a long time. That's practically 65 years away from me.
just figures
I'm not talking about emotional intelligence, Tim.
his doctor's always so surprised to see him turn up for his annual physical, I guess. Maybe an indicator of
Actually, true. Funny story. My father is 87 years old, and he has a great joke that he tells all the time. He said, every time I leave the doctor's office and they don't make me pay in cash on my way out the door, I figure I'm in pretty good shape. If they're willing to bill me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really good way of looking at it. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah, that's the classic. We're having problems with our computer. Would you be able to pay in cash on your credit card?
Exactly.
So, hey, there's another one just to kind of tidy up all of this, which is the oft-maligned TripAdvisor, right? Who I know Ed loves this one, which is why I wanted to bring it up, right?
Because I'm right. It's not that I hate TripAdvisor. It's I love being right. And I've been right about TripAdvisor for a very long time.
I don't know. They had TripAdvisor by the numbers, rich travel content. They have 702 million reviews. They've got 2.1 million accommodations. They still have 490 million average monthly unique visitors, which is still a pretty daunting number. And they've got all sorts of different things, right? What's interesting though is that they finally figured out how to become profitable in terms of, they're looking at the growth of unique visitors, growth of reviews, and growth of listings and things like that. But they are now finally starting to get a little bit of revenue per user, kicking up, right? So their profitability, they had, 331 million in EBITDA. Now that's for a year. That's not for a quarter. Right, so we're talking about quarterly numbers before, but 238 million in cash flow, which is good. But the key is that they are starting to drive up their segment adjusted EBITDA growth. Was up, I think, 94% third quarter over the previous third quarter was not so good, but they're doing some very interesting things. They are reducing their digital marketing. They're increasing their hotel or their television advertising for hotels, like 58%. They're doing some really kind of bizarre stuff, but they're
finding holes. But they're doing is they're programmatically finding holes as people shift, as their competitors for the consumer attention are shifting how they're spending. They're finding the opportunities that are viable. To get a lower cost of acquisition, while also jacking up the cost of being on their platform, and while increasing the size of the stick for not spending the money with them, further screwing hotels.
And Wall Street rewarded them by popping their share price by 15%.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And that is a problem, right? So they've, what could probably be good for the market, where you could look at that and say, as metasearch, you could have embraced the hotels and Hotel Direct and really facilitated this, pulled stuff away from the OTAs. You've got all the reviews, and you could really do it. I bet if they weren't publicly held, they might have had a shot.
But if they weren't publicly held, they could have gone after an entirely different strategy too, right? I mean, they were the best content you could possibly get. If you think about the way that they used to feature the content, it was based upon answering what was the correct question for the guest and the like, and what did people really care about and everything. And they've moved away from that. I think it's bad for hotels. I think it's bad for consumers. And in the long run, I think it's bad for TripAdvisor. Yeah, they're getting some short-term pop. They're monetizing what traffic they have, and then they're going to beat that horse until it's dead.
But their content's still pretty thin in terms of, yes, they've got pictures, which is good. They've got reviews, which are unique. That's fantastic. But when you really start looking at anything, and let's show pictures of the different rooms in an organized, structured manner, the way an OTA or they've still got this massive gap, which they could have worked on, right?
They could have worked on. They didn't work on that because they were trying to monetize the traffic they already got.
Yeah, they needed profitability.
Right.
I mean, that was the bottom line. If they didn't want to get
profit growth specifically, right? It wasn't just that they needed profitability; they needed to show growth in profitability.
Right.
I'll tell you what: if they were a privately held company, I'd be happy to own them.
Oh yeah.
right? Because they could have made a lot of money for a long time and grown at a modest pace, in a way that the street wasn't demanding.
But in the whole time that it was growing at a modest pace, it would be a like ATM machine. I mean, that's the
Correct.
thing
It
is
was an
had this
annuity,
been done
man.
had this been done well
Yeah.
and kept private, this could have been an ATM machine into perpetuity, and also had been applied to the industry to actually do good, not just
Correct.
screw hotels like everything ends up doing in this industry.
Correct.
Like
Hey,
every
well-
model, every consumer model that ends up like getting ingrained in the consumer behavior ends up at the expense of hotels.
Well,
Airlines
exactly.
somehow always dodge it.
Well,
Hotels, on the other hand, tend to be the ones who take the beating.
airlines control all the origins and destinations. They divvy
Right.
them up, and they control all the data, basically.
Right.
So between ATPCO and ARC and all that stuff, they've created their walled garden. Now they have NDC plugging into it, which is now that the airlines are actually, I think 2019, you're going to see some NDC, implementations where it's actually doing stuff. But those guys are going to be merchandising those airline passengers, and it's like, hey, we know that these people are going to Orlando before anyone else does. Huh.
Right.
Wonder if that's valuable.
Right.
So, yeah,
Right.
pretty high purchase intention when their prepaid, non-cancelable, non-refundable flights are booked.
Right. Well, I want to make a point about TripAdvisor for 1 second that has stuck with me for a long time, and I think is still true. And I would give credit if I could remember where I read this. This is from 3 years ago or 4 years ago when TripAdvisor was out there.
Probably.
No, this was some Wall Street analyst. I would absolutely credit if I could remember who said it. Right. But this was when TripAdvisor was at their real depth in terms of, the real low point in terms of where the stock was and the like. And
$30
this
a
analyst,
share.
yeah, and the analyst basically pointed out TripAdvisor's problem is that they are a media company and want to be treated like a technology company.
Right,
And if they hadn't been so focused on what the street wanted and things along those lines, I think they could have been the best media company in the world, not named Facebook, right?
Yep.
But because they wanted to be valued as a tech company and because the street expected to value them as a tech company, they've gone in the wrong direction in terms of what it's doing for guests and what it's doing for hotels. Now, can they monetize that for a long time? Sure. Can for some period? Sure. Will it eventually come back to bite them? I think absolutely.
Yeah. Unless Coffer can pull another rabbit out of his hat. I mean, here he kind of pulled the profitability at least he's gotten it from 30 to 66, which is pretty.
Yeah, but those are temporary bumps,
and they're trailing indicators, right?
Right.
Look at the pivots that Coffer has been able to do with that company, and it's astounding. It's astounding he's still CEO. Right, because people would, but he's been successful at these things, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, but Robert,
I mean, really good. It's not. He's
been successful at taking something that got to a point that gave you 20 different ways you could go and be successful, and so far he's picked the ways that included short-term success.
Go down that way, yeah. And
I want to be really fair about this. I mean, look, Coffer's a really smart guy. I don't want to, this is easy for me to sit here and armchair quarterback. It's easy for any of us to sit here and armchair quarterback.
That's what we do.
That's what we do, right? So he's a smart guy. What he has succeeded in doing, and this is a thing that I will admit is a peeve of mine, and I'm going to sound really innocent and naive and all this other kind of stuff for a second, is he's done a really good job of getting the street to agree that he's done a good thing. Right. Yep. And that is sometimes obviously if you need the capital to go invest in the things you want to invest in, that's absolutely an important thing. I want to be really clear about that. What is also true is that can be a lagging indicator, and it can be something that is very short-lived because you got to keep dancing to the piper, right? You got to keep dancing to the
but let's
tune.
Also face it. Let's talk about like what the opposite of that could have been. Let's talk about who are the most meteoric rises in company valuations. They're all companies that had to show the street that what they wanted was wrong. Correct. And that the models they wanted were completely wrong, and that there was another way. And those companies have come out of nowhere and are some of the biggest, most powerful, most impactful consumer-facing companies that have ever existed in the history of the world. And they all have something in common, which is their primary leaders maintain control of the decisions of the direction the company goes in, and they're not afraid to tell the street that they don't care what you think is right. This is what we're going to do.
Oh, no. And the problem was the sale to Expedia, right? I mean, I think, and for a while, Expedia left them alone, right? And it kept going. I think it was when Expedia divested and said, no, because again, the street was giving Expedia pressure that they had a really complicated business that they couldn't understand, and they were getting confused, and the share price was being depressed, not because of the performance, but because they couldn't figure out what was happening.
At the time that Expedia had them, that would have actually been better if that was Facebook. Could you imagine if it was Facebook that had search as TripAdvisor? Like, that would have been the best case scenario for the hotel industry of what could have possibly happened, because it would have been used in a way where there was fair value on the getting the consumer experience driven to your path. But outside of them, they're the only buyer I could think that would have been, good for hotels. Like Google owning it, it wouldn't be good for them. Expedia.
I'm going to bash Google for 1 second. If Google had owned it, they would have mismanaged it badly, like they do most of the things they buy. I mean, realistically,
so much scale that even mismanaging it still would have been a huge success.
Well, I want to be fair. I don't mean this to bash Google on one level, because obviously they're very successful at the thing that they're very successful at. They're so, all over the place with their strategy for everything else. Right?
There's not enough being said inside of Google, I think. I don't think there's enough management saying, hey, this is a bad idea. I think too many people...
I think it's quite the opposite. It's that whole plant 1,000 flowers, plant 1,000 seeds and let a dozen flowers bloom or something like that, right? They buy 10 things, and if one of them works out, yippee-ki-yay, and
Just look at their messaging strategy between
their what?
Hangouts. Your lack there.
I hate Hangouts.
Strategy. But you've got Hangouts, you've got Voice, you've got Allo, you've got Duo, and you're like, you can put this stuff together to have a unified messaging platform that could kill. I mean, all these things have nice little attributes, and it's like, okay, I know they were put on different platforms, but you've got engineers and you've got money. You can do this, and it's got to be better than trying to run 5 platforms. But who knows? Yeah. No, the challenge though with Google would never buy TripAdvisor because it wasn't really a tech play, right?
No, they bought Frommer's.
Oh, that's true. Well, yeah, that's true. Zagat. Well,
Zagat, rather. Excuse me, Zagat. Sorry. Sorry. Got the wrong travel guide. But
I think they sold it again, though, didn't they?
So here you go. So I actually have an idea then.
But they owned it for
what TripAdvisor could do right now that no one would understand, but actually if you take time to think about it and put the pieces together, it'd make a ton of sense. TripAdvisor should buy AAA.
Oh, they don't want to buy AAA because it's all 5 different clubs and they're highly dysfunctional organization.
Yeah, but
you can't
take some time. Let that simmer on what TripAdvisor and AAA together.
Yeah.
What you could have out the other end from a model perspective, plus from a consumer ingrainment perspective, I think you could make interesting things happen with that. And I think both of them are garbage companies right now. So
I agree with your last statement. I don't know that I don't know that you add 2 negatives and hope you get a positive on this one, right?
I'm saying that's the same strategy that resulted in the Sears Kmart connection.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how I see that.
Kmart would have been around today if it wasn't for that.
Could have been. Yeah,
they would have been more powerful.
And when you talk about the consumer play on AAA, I don't know, man. You talk to anybody under a certain age, they're like, triple what? I think I think it will die as people die,
They are an insurance
like golf.
Yeah.
Like golf. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Skiing. They're all sorts
Hey,
No,
I didn't
okay.
inject this, but you guys know I like to do like, how does a pebble, cause a ripple effect that, potentially
Sure,
could be a
sure.
worldwide phenomenon.
Sure.
One happened this week in the state of Florida that I actually think is really interesting. So
Felon
I don't
speak.
know if you guys heard, but there was an election that happened.
There's a what?
Yeah, exactly. In that election, the citizens of the state of Florida voted on some amendments to, the state of Florida,
Yeah.
and one of them was about greyhound racing, which is now
Oh
going
yeah,
to be.
they banned greyhound racing. Yeah, I saw that.
So, do you think that will be the beginning of the end of the greyhound species?
Oh,
I haven't got the first notion. I'm not remotely qualified to answer that question.
So, retired greyhounds make
Yeah.
great pets,
Okay.
yeah,
but they're old at that point.
right.
Okay.
Puppy greyhounds you can
They're
only
great.
own if you basically have a ranch
Yeah,
and
they're really high
incredible
strung.
patience.
Yeah.
So because they're bred for racing,
Yeah.
Florida, if Florida is going to ban something, it's on its way out everywhere in the United States then, because nothing gets banned in Florida. And so what actually made me think of this was I was trying to figure out how we ended up going. Did we end up banning it? I hadn't seen it yet. I was Googling it and I found an article out of a newspaper in Australia saying this exact thing, that Florida's banning of greyhound racing is the beginning of the end of the greyhound breed as we know it. They're eventually going to either completely change to some other complete
What's
type
the
of
mix
dog.
between a greyhound and a poodle? Grapoodle.
A Grudel?
A Grudel.
Yeah.
A
Grudel?
Grudel? But yeah, that's something I thought we could take as like a little distraction today is, do we think the ban of greyhound racing in the state of Florida is going to be the beginning of the end of the greyhound species?
I
So then 50 years from now, will
I
there?
don't know. I really have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Think about it. Let that hurt your brain a little bit.
Could be. But 50 years from now, 50 years from now, will there be Florida, or will it all be just underwater? So yeah, that's
Fair enough. Probably not.
exactly.
It'll be under green and red water.
So it's a smart
even
move.
clear
We won't
water.
have greyhounds drowning, so that's good. It was a good thing.
Yeah,
Very.
yeah, because
Lots
they
of
can't
fun.
swim well. Yeah.
You'll have manatee tracks instead.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Manatee racing.
Exactly.
Really painful. It's very slow.
So are there? Oh, I guess there was one other kind of interesting earnings-related thing where Amadeus is spending a lot of money on product development.
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. There's one key reason why,
Yeah.
because they bought a company that has not spent a lot of money in the R&D of the products that they sell, and yet it's very widely distributed amongst the independent hotels, which is TravelClick.
Yes.
Thoma Bravo had started the amping of investment into TravelClick, actually putting R&D into their products. So prior to Thoma Bravo making the additional spend that they had spent, TravelClick had less than a full-time employee's worth of salary attributed to each product that they had in total R&D spend. So it worked out to about half. So, for every 2 products they had a full-time employee engineer level salary attributed to it, which basically means they had 0 R&D. So Thoma Bravo had done a substantial spend increase. It was something like 3 or 4 times that amount. But iHotelier's old, and it's been a long time since Drew and Rodrigo had rebuilt it for TravelClick for the last time that they did it. I don't think the Rubicon people were there anymore for any of the pricing intelligence stuff. The GDS advertising technology was super old. They had ZDirect. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, that was my Sabre promo spots 1997, which created TravelClick.
They had ZDirect.
It was.
But they had ZDirect as a fairly recent purchase, but even CRM technology has grown substantially since that purchase. And picking up Digital Alchemy was not a tech purchase. That was an agency purchase for services.
Right.
So,
So I'm not going to push back hard on what you're saying. I was at the TravelClick did their, analyst day or whatever, over the summer, and I was there. And I will tell you, the stuff they were doing with ZDirect and how they integrated into the CRM and the way that they integrated, what I was very impressed with, I think I'm allowed to share this, was, the way they were using data from CRM and from the CRS and the like to make, predictive, to do some AI stuff, some machine learning stuff, to make predictions about when should you send your messaging and things along those lines, and how effective is it, and why is this message outperforming that message, I did think was actually pretty cool in terms of, it's the kind of stuff people talk about a lot, but it actually worked,
Right.
Well,
and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they hadn't been making progress, but I mean, quite honestly,
it wasn't the investment that you would see in a CRS, if that's your point, right?
Or in a $1 billion company,
right?
$1 billion valuation company, they
$1.5 billion company,
right. No,
1.6, 1.5 or 1.6 was their exit, which
was
everybody.
That the final settlement? Because I thought it was 1.3 was the final settlement number.
Oh, maybe, I don't know. Maybe they did something.
Which, by the way, do the math on that, on what Toma paid for TravelClick and then what they sold it for in a short time, and the additional investment. That was break even. That was a break even sale. That wasn't. I don't think anyone at Toma was like, they were like,
well, everybody I know who was looking at it before Toma bought it was about half their price of what they paid too, right? So.
Oh yes. So, anyways, I wouldn't be surprised if Amadeus is actually looking at, okay, how do we make all of this inside of a single platform universe? Because none of their stuff is single platform, and it's all connected the same way it would have been connected if they were separate companies and partners.
Come on, Ed. Let's be fair. If they were separate companies and partners, none of it would have been connected. So if it was connected at all,
fair enough. Okay,
I may be a little cynical at this point on a Friday afternoon, but
fair enough. I'll give you that. But I mean, not connected in the way that a platform.
No, of course they were not deeply integrated, right?
Right. They weren't, on the same database.
Right.
So I'm sure Amadeus has a lot of work to do on how do you take these 30-something products that you just acquired that are heavily deployed. You can't sunset a single one of them, because one of the way TravelClick always got growth was by bundling all this crap together, so you could never unravel and cancel and all of that stuff, which means you can't sunset a single product they had, because sunsetting that will violate these contracts and so I mean, so
and they migrate people onto the new platform that's launched for IHG and figure out all the product gaps between them, which is going to be.
I hotel your customers are used to that. I think they've been migrated like 46 times in the last 10 years.
They're just continuing through the gauntlet.
Yep. So, no, but I agree with you, Tim. I mean, they were actually making good stuff happen. I mean, this new management team that TravelClick had actually was building a really good team of very clever people. And those clever people were being given the ability to actually do things, and they were doing clever things with it. But I mean, remember, like in the Bob Post days, like TravelClick was a sales organization that, was incredibly lean in spending, and it was a cash machine. It was an ATM machine. But there was no investment in infrastructure. There was no investment in product. They bought things and put them into the sales channel.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That was
I'm a fan. I will tell you, in rough terms, I'm a fan of the current management of the folks. Current at the time of sale, right? I don't know who's sticking around it, and once the earnouts happen and all that other kind of stuff. But I thought their direction over the last couple of years was smart. Very
IBM. It was very IBM. I think their approach.
In a good way, right?
I'm saying it in a good way, like in their sale, like in their product and sales mix approach. I think they were very IBM. Yeah. I mean, let's face it, a company that size can't be super innovative. Not with its history that it had. Like, I mean, it was never going to be.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Tear everything down and rebuild it all on a single place? I mean, that's just not
Right. It would have
yeah.
been cheaper to just build from the beginning, never acquire the company, and go
Sure.
that way. Be a heavily funded startup versus buying that and tearing it down and putting it back
Well,
together.
except for the acquisition of the whatever it is, 30,000 properties, which would take many years. So that, and which was why Amadeus bought it, right? They needed bulk, and they didn't want to wait 20 years. Or I don't know. how
Right.
long it was.
Well, 'cause
Yeah, that was a customer acquisition.
Right, right. Well, I mean, and this is a fair question that I don't know the answer to, and if they've been public about it, I haven't seen it. But you look at the work that Amadeus has done on the CRS that they built for IHG. I mean, I think what you're saying, and I think this is correct, is they bought Pipeline for that CRS, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because
Until-
Yeah, because the only way they're going to de-risk that one giant customer is to
Right.
offset that revenue on that R&D spend
correct.
by putting a bunch of customers on it, so that way your revenue risk goes down and your valuation goes up.
Right.
Well,
You
and they
know.
compete head to head with Sabre, right? Because they
Right.
can look at one big
Well, and that's
customer.
the thing. If I'm Sabre, I like that purchase. That
Oh, yeah.
that makes me nervous. Because Sabre's infrastructure is getting really old.
Oh yeah.
and,
Synixis acquisition was what, 2003, 2004, something. I can't remember. Yeah.
It's a while ago.
Yeah, and it's still very much like HubX and RedX, and
Yeah, yeah.
like
HubX.
it's not changed a whole lot since those
No.
days.
No.
So I mean, if I'm them and I look at it and go, well, crap, Amadeus owns TravelClick now. Amadeus I've always thought has been a very good product company. Like the products they've created have been solid compared to peers. I mean, again, I'm playing on a different level here. So I think you take a very good product company and acquire a sales org like TravelClick. I think TravelClick's probably one of the best sales org companies that's existed in a long time in this industry. You're now pairing those two together.
Yeah, they just have to figure out the whole contracting I mean, they've still got a lot of heavy lifting to go. Here's something as opposed to large companies, because we're coming up 3 minutes to the top of the hour.
Yeah.
I just want to throw this one in because I thought it was so interesting. That's Videx Startup Periodical. I hadn't really heard of this before, but it's actually a couple guys who are involved, or Focusrite guys, and this is like the encyclopedia of travel industry startups, and they're publishing it, and it's free, and I'm not exactly sure what their business model is or anything, but it's really interesting looking at all these different places, and you have links to all the sites, which is, I think that's all we need to say about that, and hopefully Lauren will get them into the show notes, but have fun clicking around, seeing all these different groups, which is interesting. And
I like. Have you guys spent any time on Hotel Tech Report? I like what they're putting together.
Oh yeah. They're doing a nice job.
Yeah. Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
And
there's
then-
a lot of good things coming, trying to bring some transparency to what's basically the mattress industry, which is the vendor sphere serving the hotel industry.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, no, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. Pretty
Okay,
All right, so
interesting model.
since we're coming at the end, does that mean we get to go to the rut row?
The rut row. Here we go. Our friends in Minneapolis at Radisson had a little bit of a problem, which could turn into a much bigger problem. The title of this story was "Radisson Hack Shows Vulnerability of Hospitality Industry." So, they basically, the writer of this out of the UK was kind of saying, well, is the hotel industry getting targeted because fast booking got hit? There's a leisure firm in the UK, Butlins, that got hit. Hilton got hit in 2015, and it's like, yikes. The problem here, though, the real problem, is that they may have a big GDPR issue, because this thing happened apparently on the 11th of September. The hotel chain identified it on October 1st, but and it impacts Radisson Rewards members, didn't advise them of it until October 30th. And the EU
Mm.
GDPR regulations say when you find out about these, you've got to tell the GDPR folks within 72 hours. And they didn't. So my question is, what is Radisson, or at that point is Carlson Residor, right? What's their relationship with the EU? Is it been friendly and nice?
It doesn't matter. The EU's been looking for marquee cases to use as examples of application of the stick side of GDPR. So the thing that's scary about that is being a big enough company that has a big enough footprint in the EU that you can't just try and America your way out of it. Like that's the problem. They're the poster child for kind of what the EU's been looking for. Now that also may be helpful because my advice to whoever's dealing with this for Radisson, like do whatever the EU tells you to do, bargain, beg, whatever you have to do, which may even include that the EU now owns you. I don't know. But don't go to jail over this.
It's the classic.
Because here's the thing. I mean, the hotel industry
apologize, overcompensate.
Right. Yep. The hotel industry is an easy target because there's so much homegrown systems that are aging. Like if I was Marriott right now, I'd be so nervous because their system is so old. And that's the stuff that and it's so big. Their system is so big.
Marcia is so old and written in TPF and so inflexible. It's hard to hack that.
That's true. Since nothing can connect to it, including their own internal systems, maybe you're right.
That's right. When you need a steam fitter to kind of.
But if you look at like Radisson's infrastructure, Curtis C, their CRS, the way that was connected to Micros, they don't even know how that connection functions. I mean, that is like if you're the chief security officer of Radisson, like you knew that this was inevitable because you look at the landscape of what not to do in order to be a secure organization, and they were the opposite of that. And that's why I was puzzled. Like, weren't they the ones? Didn't they sign with Synexus to do kind of the Wyndham type deal with them and then pulled out of it?
I don't know.
I'm fairly certain. And when I heard that, like I was scratching my head going, man, because Curtis C is hamsters on wheels tied together with spaghetti, and no one knows how it works.
Right.
So like that's a security nightmare.
Yeah, I'm going to make a bold prediction. I don't know that I'm right. I'm just going to make a prediction. I think you're right that they're looking for some test cases and the like. I think we're going to, 7 months down the road, there's going to be a press release about, all the changes Radisson is making to their culture and to their systems and their such and such to, be, even working in greater partnership with the EU to protect the data sea of all customers, yada, yada, yada. And they are going to get off easy, except publicly scolded. I don't think they're going to get hit with the big penalties or things like that. I think what GDPR is looking for, what the European Union is looking for, and I agree with you conceptually, is they want the test case, but they want to show, look, we made them toe the line, rather than, at least the way I've had it explained to me. I could be wrong about this. I am not a lawyer by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, as long as you do what you're told to do, you can avoid.
Correct. Right. The penalties. The
financial
ruin really to damage like the evil folks, right? The spammers and the scammers and folks like that. So I think Radisson's going to get off easy publicly. I think they're going to have to do some real serious tap dancing in the background to make the EU happy.
Well, especially if anyone in the news like really gets excited about this and decides to actually do like an expose on the state of infrastructure. That would be problematic for them.
So I'm going to be cynical again. I'm going to be really cynical again. I don't think most people care. I think most people say they care, and they care when it impacts them directly, and then these stories go away. I mean, how many hacking
stories? I'll agree with you.
I
mean, the Equifax breach, you don't hear anyone talking about that anymore.
Right, and if that didn't get people to like riot in the streets, I don't know what it's going to take.
Well, and if you actually think about what it's done, it's made them money because it costs $25 to unlock your credit, which
That's
now
what
you
I
have to
mean,
do whenever
man.
you want to apply for credit, and then it costs you
Yeah.
$25 to relock it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. I think people say they care, and they certainly care in the moment when their data gets exposed, right? I literally right now I care a lot. My credit card got stolen the other day. Not stolen, but the number got used the other day. And it's a pain in the rear because I'm waiting for the replacement credit card to show up, and right now I can't do anything.
Was it an American Express?
It's
Nope.
not an American Express.
Because I can tell you,
Okay.
man, American Express makes that process super painless.
Oh,
They
Yeah,
automatically anything you were auto paying automatically gets ported to the new card number. Like it's all
Really?
super painless. Yeah, it's really nice. Because I had
I'm on
for
a-
the
I'm on a
first time.
Visa.
Member,
Yes.
member since 1981.
Yeah, I mean, this was I had my card duped from a gas station. They caught it immediately. They had a card
Which
out to me
Visa
the
caught
next
immediately.
day.
And
Yep,
Visa caught
but
immediately. But I haven't seen
I
the
would
replacement
say,
card
like,
yet. And
my Amex, I auto pay so much off that card
oh yeah,
because
yep.
for the
Oh, yeah.
points, you know.
Yep.
So
Right, totally.
I've not had to update a single thing. They all
Oh.
still run beautifully. They've been given their own identifier number so they can continue to run. Like it's
super
amazing.
jealous right
This is
now.
a central database.
And they gave me a metal card for the replacement, which is super cool because I was gonna need to get a new card anyways because mine break from being in my wallet.
Yeah.
Now I got this like metal card that feels really cool when you bring it
Well,
out.
I'm super jealous. I legitimately, but I do go back to the original point of I just think people don't care. They care at the moment, they care in the immediate moment, and then they don't care. And the Equifax one to me is the absolute test case. People should have been losing their minds over that. There should have been,
I did.
public hearings in Congress, and people getting dragged publicly, about this kind
Well,
of stuff.
because if you think about really with the Equifax thing too, we were all forced to take part in that
Correct.
company. We did not have a
Correct.
choice.
Right.
And then they were held to no recourse, for
We were talking
basically.
about the global financial crisis, right? All
Right,
those.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
one guy went to jail, maybe.
Yeah, like when some low
No,
level.
that was the joke at the end of the movie. See, you're confusing it. The movie, the Big Short, they say
Right.
only one guy went to jail, and then if you actually read it, they said, "Nah, just kidding, no one went to jail."
No, what they did
I
in the
think
big
there was-
they talked about all the CEOs going to jail and all this. So like one guy went to jail.
Oh, one
One-
guy, okay.
Yeah.
Because the joke at the end was, all these CEOs went to jail, and there were massive changes in the regulatory infrastructure, and yada 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 yada. And then they went, just kidding. One guy went to jail.
Well,
And it
that's
was
like
some-
Volkswagen.
and it was literally like
Volkswagen.
some director guy, like director, like below a VP, not director, like board of directors, right?
Yeah.
Have
Well,
you
that's like
seen-
the Dieselgate with
Right,
Volkswagen.
right.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, they were, my gosh, just crucified.
Yeah.
And then, slowly every auto manufacturer has come out that, oh, by the way, we were cheating too. So we'll take our
Right.
take our lesser fine and we'll stop making that car. But every auto manufacturer, it has now come out, was cheating on emissions testing. But it doesn't even make the news. Like, it's not even headline anymore. Volkswagen got destroyed by it. And then, everyone kind of waited for the dust to clear on that and then just kind of went, hey, we think we may have been doing that as well.
Right.
Cannot
Well,
confirm that we were.
And I think I suspect, and I'm making, I don't think this is a bold prediction. This is just a sort of mild prediction. But I think most people recognize this is going to happen. Everybody's been hacked or will be at some point, and as long as you make me whole, I don't really care. So I think Radisson is going to get off with a, maybe some public beatings, but and having been on the other end of some of this a couple times in my career, certainly a lot of work for a lot of folks behind the scenes to shore up the things that allowed this to happen in the first place and put in place procedures to try to prevent it in the future. I don't want to say it's no big deal because it's a lot of work, but I think publicly the effect that this is going to have on Radisson as a brand, a year
Well,
from
and
now,
it was their
nobody's going to remember this
loyalty
happened.
program, wasn't it?
Yeah,
There's their loyalty
It
program.
was their loyalty
So there
program.
was no credit card information.
That's
then,
what I
right?
mean. So
That's-
literally,
yeah.
Like this was email addresses,
Email addresses. I
and
think
let's
home
face
address-
it. Let's face it. I bet you
It also-
60% of those email addresses were the people's secondary
Were
email that
retired,
they used
right,
for spamming.
right.
Here's the one weird one though. It had passwords too, so the passwords weren't encrypted somehow.
which is incredibly dumb, right?
Yeah,
Which is
it's like
And
incredibly
that's what
that.
happens when you have really old technology.
right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
for
Because
sure.
you used
But
to
yeah,
just store that stuff. You didn't tokenize it. You didn't.
right.
Oh,
But
no.
in long term,
You didn't transmit it over
impact-
HTTPS.
Right. The long term impacts to the company
You
publicly
transferred it over TTY.
non-existent, right? TPY, right? They're using an airline tip.
So there you
So
go.
we're-
So with that, we successfully covered multiple topics in today's show.
We
We
did.
only talked about politics a handful of times.
Oh, hey, one
I-
quick segue from
No,
we talked
speaking of
about the Big
politics.
Short. No, we talked about the Big Short. New Adam McKay movie, Vice, coming out about Dick Cheney.
I know. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah, that looks funny.
Christian Bale as Dick Cheney is
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
That looks pretty
Yeah.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about it. I like Adam McKay, man. He's
Does
good.
does great stuff. So
So
Very
with
good.
that, oh, by the way, I've gone way of Robert, and I've made my Twitter account completely annoying. So you may want to unfollow me. I'm just gonna say.
Oh, I did
Oh.
that like 2 months ago.
Okay, good.
No, I'm kidding.
yeah, even it was annoying before, Ed. What's UCF?
Actually, it's silent before. Here's what's annoying: is I'm using it now for something.
UCF is undefeated and still in the top 10, right? They haven't fallen out of the top 10 yet.
There you are, number 12.
They're number 12. They did fall out. Oh, sorry about that.
There are two lost teams in front of them.
I'm being very low key and very quiet about this because I'm a Michigan fan and we're having an amazing
Actually, I think
season.
Michigan's having an amazing season, and I
And
think
we all
Michigan belongs where they are.
I do too, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to gloat. I'm not going to brag. I'm not going to do anything because if we don't win a game in 2 weeks,
Yes,
if the game
against
that
a
we play in
team
2 weeks,
that does not
nothing
belong in the top
else
10.
matters. Correct.
Listen,
Exactly.
Listen,
No.
Ohio State is one of my biggest issues with the college football ranking this week because
Correct.
they are ranked number 10, and
And
they
they're
have
ranked
had
number 10
two,
because they were ranked number 3 at the start of the season, not because of the number
which
10
they
team in the
also
country.
didn't deserve to be.
Correct.
They got blown out by Purdue, who is unranked,
Which was awesome.
and they barely survived Nebraska, who,
Yeah.
granted, is starting to get better, but they're a 2-win team, and
Right.
in the game of Nebraska versus Ohio State, one of them, probably what's going to be an internet meme forever, happened when the kicker whiffed the ball Charlie
Yeah.
Brown style.
That was
That was
amazing.
classic.
That was incredible.
So they shouldn't be number 10.
Correct. I agree completely.
Kentucky is in front of UCF right now, and Kentucky shouldn't even be ranked.
Does Kentucky still have a football team?
Yeah, and they actually won a couple of games this year, so everyone's like, Kentucky's back. So I use
the
my
return
Twitter
of the
account
Tim
now.
Couch era.
Yeah, my Twitter account is now fully dedicated to trolling the Twitterverse
Got it.
on behalf of UCF. So LinkedIn, it's all business. Facebook, it's all family. Twitter, it's all UCF. I've nicely divided my social
Got
media usage.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
It's like a lunch
All right,
tray;
well-
it doesn't touch.
Well,
and
Jen, so-
I'm a
Oh.
Texas Tech fan, and they would be
I
doing
know.
really well this year if their freshman quarterback, who replaced their starting quarterback, would stop getting collapsed lungs and going into the hospital.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
it's that pesky he can't breathe thing. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, guy's got to toughen up. He's got 2
Yeah.
lungs. Come
Or
on.
maybe he
Right.
should choose a different line of business. I don't know.
I wonder
Call
if he
me
could
crazy.
play. Could he play the quarterback position with a CPAP machine? Because that would keep a pressurized
This kid was
situation.
awesome.
He was awesome. Oh, I know. I was
Can he-
watching.
Can he,
Yeah.
can he hit a baseball? Like make him
Yeah,
make
exactly.
him a right fielder, like
Or a pitcher. Make him a pitcher.
or
That
make him a-
was Texas Tech's former quarterback a couple of years ago, Patrick Mahomes.
Oh yeah, sure.
I got to see him play like 3 times. That was pretty
Man, and
damn.
Patrick Mahomes, like
He looks
he's
like he
going
can
to
play
be. If he can stay healthy, I think he's the next Tom Brady level quarterback. Like he's the
Yeah.
future,
He's certainly
The,
the most fun guy to watch in the NFL right now.
no
Oh,
question.
absolutely. And
I mean,
you
without
should
question.
go watch his college footage. Oh, it is insanity.
Right.
But my daughter, who knows people who knows him, actually said he's not really a very nice guy and he's really stupid. These kind of things from the but he's good at football. So
Well,
that's
I don't want to get into the whole character thing, but I want or anything like that. But I once heard somebody say something about Peyton Manning that I thought was.
I was just going to say, so he's basically Peyton Manning.
Which Peyton Manning is always known for being charming and sweet, and he's got a great media personality and all this other kind of stuff. And they're like, the guy looks like an accountant, but watch everything he ever did on the field. He was an assassin, right? He was a mean dude. They would put in the backup cornerback, and he would just like abuse that guy for the next like 3 plays. Right?
Yeah.
Well,
Well, and
student,
got
don't
away
get
with
to
a
that
lot
level.
of things.
Oh
Got
yeah,
away
yeah.
with
Well,
a lot
yeah,
of things
yeah.
that shouldn't have gotten away with.
That he should not have gotten away with. I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mahomes and Andy Reid handled him the right way. I mean, he put him on the bench and said, "Study this and learn this and do this stuff." And
Yep.
looked
Yeah,
like
he's
that strategy
he's
worked
exciting.
out pretty well.
Yeah, well, because look at the alternate. Look at Baker Mayfield. He's struggling.
Yeah.
He's
But on a bad team, on a bad team. Kansas City was
A bad team with all the talent. Like they have amazing talent.
Look at 538 and their chaos rankings.
Yep.
Um,
I love 538.
Yeah,
for
they've got this great thing
all
about
of their data.
they've got a great thing about one of the reasons, and we'll make this vaguely hotel related. If you want to look at how a great organization functions versus how a miserable organization functions, it's a terrific read. They came up with a thing they called chaos rankings. Hold on one second. I want to pull this up real quick because this was very funny, and also, it has business implications in terms of how you run your business. Hold on one second. Oh, sorry, this was great. They wrote an article a couple of weeks back. The Browns' suckiness defies math and reason. Like, it's almost mathematically impossible to be as consistently
it shouldn't
bad as the
exist.
Browns been
Right.
for the last however many years. And they came up with a ranking. Where is this? This is so funny.
some form of mutation.
Yeah, they came up with some sort of cumulative high activity organizational strife or chaos score. Yeah, you get 2 points for changing owners, 3 for changing GMs, 7 for changing coaches, and 10 for changing your primary quarterback. And since 2000, the Browns are the undisputed kings of chaos.
Yep.
Excellent.
It's right though.
And it's not even close. They're number 1 and number 2. They're
Oh, so
237.
they have a
points.
ranking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
who
Cleveland was number 1.
chaotic?
Pittsburgh, and New England was number 2, and the Giants were number 3, and Green Bay was number 4, and New Orleans was number 5. And I mean, I'm a Giants fan. Obviously, the Giants have not always produced on the field, but they have years where they're very good. They have years where they're very bad, but they're consistent in the way they run their operation.
And they're easy to identify why they're doing bad. Like right now, it's easy to see what's wrong.
Well, there's 2
And
things that are wrong, but one is they need an offensive line, and 2, they have a quarterback who can't play when you don't have an offensive line, right? Like,
Right.
This is I love their YABQ stat, which is compares the quarterback's passing and rushing performance in terms of adjusted net yards to that of a hypothetical backup level NFL quarterback. And you got New England Patriots, and they're like 21,000 yards. The Browns are at minus 2,800 yards.
Right.
They're actually negative.
right.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, if you actually think about it, the Browns and New England are the polar opposite of each other. New England can take a mediocre player, focus them to the one thing they can do well, and make them into a superstar inside the New England system. The Browns can't take first-round draft picks and turn them into anything.
Correct.
Yeah.
And by the
Right.
way, I think it's interesting that the first quarterback, the first coach that I can remember the Browns firing from memory is Bill Belichick.
Yep. Yep. That's actually why I'm actually thinking, just going into NFL now, since we're way off the chart.
Yeah.
Is I actually think it'd be interesting to see.
Gone to hell in a handbasket at this
Let's
point.
see New England pick up. I think because they are going to need someone who can sit behind Brady and be the future.
Sure.
I think Blake Bortles.
Maybe.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I watch football, but very very casually, very passively. So I like the Giants, and I know who Patrick Mahomes is, and I know who Brady is, obviously.
So Blake
But I don't
Bortles
know
is
that
the quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars,
right? Yeah.
who is inconsistent.
But I don't know enough about
as
him. I've never seen him play.
He's inconsistent as heck.
Yeah.
Got it.
And so, and it's in the most frustrating way. He goes from being like statistically the best to statistically the worst.
Yeah.
Without any real indication of what you're getting. So he's right now in all-time rushing yards, the number 3 quarterback in NFL history.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Sounds like a guy made for, in all seriousness, made for New England, by the way.
Made
'Cause if
for
he-
New England.
Because if he can do it some of the time.
He's
They could-
incredibly coachable, not
Yeah.
all that talented. Who's that sound like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I think, and he's the right age to be able to do 2 or 3 more years with patience because he's had humble pie shoved down his throat. He's the patsy of the Jaguars,
Yeah.
the most hated
Oh yeah,
person in Jacksonville.
Sure.
goes
Yeah.
out there to
Um,
food. Yeah.
So, I mean, his ego's gone. I think because the Jags have to get rid of him, they just signed an extension, they're screwed. I think you see them trade him to be the backup to Tom Brady in New England. And I think you see him being one of the next great quarterbacks because he'll be in a system. It won't be on his shoulders. He's 26, 27. So, I mean, he's entering his prime. He can sit for 2 more years and not have it be overly negative to his overall career. But yeah, get him installed.
Mahomes turns 23 next month.
Which that's what's amazing is NFL quarterbacks' prime years are 25 to 32. It's like that range. So he's not even in it. Mahomes isn't even in his prime yet. That's why I say if he can stay injury free, like he's potentially like the next Drew Brees, or better.
Well, and I think he's getting really. His dad was a Major League Baseball player, right? And so I think he's got. I think he's always been brought up on how you take care of your body
and pitchers with the different angles that they can throw.
Oh yeah.
Make really interesting quarterbacks because they don't need to be in a stance to throw a ball accurately with power. And that's one of the things Patrick Mahomes really has is he has the ability with different arm angles to be able to rocket that ball into pinpoint accuracy. I mean, that means under pressure, sure. Like who needs an O-line? The guy can throw the ball from any angle of arm. He's fine.
Well, and so
right.
we might as well talk about my favorite basketball team, the Milwaukee Bucks.
Wait, Dens, before we go down that path,
You're gonna go.
have to sign off. Yeah, I not that I'm unwilling to participate in the discussion, all else being equal, but not everything's equal in this case.
Hey, by the way, Tim, been trying to call you, for a while.
What are you talking about? When did you call me?
Last week. I left you a message last week.
I swear to God, I didn't get it. Or if I did, Tim, you have to
unblock his number. Unblock the number.
You're going to unblock me, Tim.
No, or what may have happened is you may have left me a voicemail. This is ringing a bell now that you say this, and it didn't go on my list of callbacks, and that's bad. So sorry about that. It slipped through a crack.
Okay.
I will give you a call on Monday. Let me put
Sounds good.
Right now. All right. So,
cool.
Where can people find you, Ed St. Ange?
Not on Twitter, but on LinkedIn, Edward St. Ange. And you can find out about Flip2 by going to flip.to. Mr. Cole, how can people find you?
At rockcheetah.com or on social media at Robert K. Cole.
And Mr. Peter, if someone wants to access the internet, what is the URL to get all of the content of the internet?
Portal of the internet, the only one that matters.
Excite.com.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
had to go there. All right, so you can find me at timpeter.com. I'm Tim Peter on most forms of social media, except I'm TC Peter on Twitter.
Not plural.
Not plural. I am a singular Peter.
Yeah. That's right.
So, gentlemen, great conversation. We should be proud of ourselves. We got to multiple topics, yet still squeezed in stuff that has nothing to do with hotels. I think it was a great, successful day.
I think so.
Absolutely. All right, gents, have
All
a great weekend. Enjoy the basketball conversation if it continues, and I'll see you guys next week.
Jonathan Antetokounmpo. That's the guy.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye now.
I just want to hear you guys try to say that name. That's all.
All right. Let's